We were prepared for somewhere in the neighborhood of 20,000 concurrent players. We had 150,000 in the first 2 to 3 minutes of turning the servers on. That number 4x'd over the weekend, and everything melted.
Whoa. Hold the f*** on. So let me get this straight. You obtained an official Friday the 13th license, set a world record for fundraising. You were going to be releasing on multiple platforms, but you only planned for 20,000 players? That sounds like a f*** up to me. That sounds like someone being extra cheap at the customer's expense. Oh, but he don't want you to think about that. He wants you to know how hard it was. He wants you to know how hard they worked for 10 days trying to fix his up. Rather than just properly planning and properly allocating resources prior to the game's launch. He'd rather launch that rocket and then climb out and try to fix things. I stole that from him.
The Dope Show. The Dope Show. The Dope Show.
Okay, so now that I think that we've had our conversation about Wes Keltner's background, I think we can move on and talk about his comments on Friday the 13th, the game, and how things supposedly went down. But he also makes some other ridiculous statements trying to sell you a narrative that his hands were completely tied. So we are going to tackle that, and I'm going to tell you what I think.
We took that out as far as we could, and then we said, okay, creatively, this is the vision we have for this game, and now we're moving on to the next adventure.
Super cool.
Now you might say, Frank, you're being petty. You're being a little too harsh there. I don't think so. And I say that because I think that if you weren't born like in the 90s or the 80s or the 70s, I don't think you understand how valuable that IP is. You know, and not just the value monetarily, also just culturally. Just think about it. Like, what does Friday the 13th mean culturally to the United States? Because in my mind, you have to plan for 1 million players and then be able to scale up or down from there, right? And the numbers more than confirm that. Those are his numbers, not mine. And one of the main reasons I bring this up is to highlight how Wes does things. Did he change? Did he learn? Was the TCM launch smoother? No. Now, maybe he was a bit more prepared server-wise, but the game was and is still a wreck. It constantly crashed, like just constantly crashed. And it did not matter where you were playing. Didn't matter if you were on a dope PC or not. Didn't matter if you're on console. It was going to crash, right? That's before we even start talking about just like all the bugs, all the exploits, all the poor design choices. You know, how about those fucking lobbies? Huh? You love those lobbies? How about all those problems? Oh, wait, I'm sorry. The 3-minute penalty fixed everything, right? One of the stupidest things I've ever heard of. Never mind implementing it. But he would rather sell people a half-cooked product and then do minimal work to deliver on what the customer was supposed to get in the first place. Rather than just put in the development time, sell people a finished, polished product. That's not who Wes is. That's not what he does. But that's why Guns Rep is so bad. But see, they don't really care about their reputation with the customers because they know that most of us are not going to hold them accountable. That's why they behave in this manner. This is what we were talking about in the prior video. Wes knows these things and he takes advantage of them.
Oh, well, we got lucky again. That's early 1970. That's hard to come by.
Can I have some too?
Of course you may.
by order of judge, we had to stop putting anything into the game. We weren't brought to court. We weren't in any kind of affidavits or any kind of legal documents. We were just told, hey, nothing else that's related to Friday the 13th can continue. You have to stop until there's a ruling, like to find out who owns what. And that's kind of a bit of a downer whenever you've got a successful multiplayer game and you need to be building and putting stuff into the game to then be told to stop. We were already setting on a lot of content that wasn't quite finished yet, but we'd already invested to build it, and that had to be shelved, and that was hard. But it was the most difficult thing is trying to explain that to the millions and millions of people who are playing the game, and they're not lawyers. They don't. That's just not what they're. And right, and trying to explain it to them, it's kind of difficult. To explain what's really going on behind the scenes. But it was in the press. It was covered by major entertainment publications, and so it was like, well, here's a link. If you want to figure out what's going on, you can go read about why this is the situation. It's the same reason why you can't go buy a T-shirt right now that has the hockey mask on it. Everything is stopped. It's why the last movie was 2009, and there still hasn't been a movie. If you think about that, it's crazy.
Oh boy, there is a lot here because clearly Wes is hiding something, right? Like he's probably hiding multiple things. It's pretty clear that he wants you to think that the situation was worse than what it really was. Yeah. I think he is exaggerating. Okay, so let's start here. What do we know to be true? We know that he did spend money developing more DLC, and then he had to shelve it for the time being. Okay? Now we know that. That's true, and that sucks, and I do not celebrate that. I want to make that very clear. I do not celebrate that. But it also sucks as a customer. So Wes spent the money, and he got screwed. But I'm going to have to call bullshit on basically everything else. Now, notice his choice of words. Everything related to Friday the 13th can't continue. Everything has stopped. Well, here's the thing. Everything did not stop. You could still buy the game. You could still buy the DLC. The dedicated servers were still up. Strange, isn't it? Especially when you contrast that with what happened with Scott Pilgrim. Just for a little while, you couldn't buy the game. So you know what that probably means. That probably means there were a lot of options available. Wes Keltner probably just didn't like those options because they meant less money, and he had just gotten screwed out of a bunch of money. Who wouldn't be pissed off about that, right? But see, I'm picking up on some dishonesty here. I'm getting a big whiff of some bullshit. See, he wants you to think his hands were tied and, they made him walk the plank or something, He wants you to think he was thrown overboard when in reality, he did some math and then he snuck off with a lifeboat in the middle of the night. Yeah, that's what I think. He made a business decision. He looked around. He said, well, I've already made a whole bunch of money. I have these new restrictions placed on me. And those things aren't really going to pay out that much money. They're not the kind of things I want to do. I got other things I want to move on to. So I'm just going to remove myself from this situation. Fuck the customers. Fuck the regular old everyday people that donated to make the game happen. I'm out. And that's fine, right? Everybody gets to choose what kind of business, you get to choose what kind of business person you want to be. You can be an ethical business person, or you can be a scumbag, right? And of course, that's always on a spectrum. You can be anywhere in between, right? But see, don't come out here lying about it. If that's what you did, then tell us what you did. Don't come out here and lie about it. Just look at his body language. Just look at his body language, man. Just look at it. That looks like nervous scrambling to me. I mean, if you think about everything he says, he's on the defensive. About what? Why is he so defensive? If there was some legality or something you couldn't talk about, you could just come out and say that. That's the easiest excuse in the world. My lawyers, I can't talk about it for legal reasons. No, he just comes out here and lies and says a bunch of ridiculous things, you know? And like no reasonable person with brain one in their head blames Wes Keltner for the lawsuit. You know, that's just a bunch of old rich dudes arguing about more money. Nobody blames Wes Keltner for the lawsuit. But to anybody paying attention, he's hiding something. And he's lying about it. You know, because if he had just came out and said, hey, look, guys, I lost a bunch of money developing DLC. I had new restrictions placed on me. I didn't know how long it was going to last. So I probably would have lost even more money. And at that point, I just felt like I was wasting my time, and I just had to stop, and I had to reconnect with my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Praise the Lord. So, you know, I just, after some prayer, I cut my losses and jumped ship with the booty, and I just set a course for the next chapter of my life. Praise the Lord. Hallelujah. I'd respect that. And I think a lot of other people would too, right? Just give it to us straight. No water, no ice. Shit. We don't even need a glass. Just pour it right in my mouth. The truth. I'll deal with it. Huh? How you dealing with it?
And that had to be shelved, and that was hard. But it was the most difficult thing is trying to explain that to the millions and millions of people who are playing the game, and but they're not lawyers. They don't. That's just not what they're. And right, and trying to explain it to them, it's kind of difficult.
Yeah.
So he just pulled out the Strawman and beat his ass to death. Poor old Strawman. He never gets a day off, does he? It was difficult trying to explain this to millions of people. They're not lawyers. You gotta be a lawyer to understand bad news. Okay. All right, buddy. Breaking bad news to people is always difficult, unless you enjoy it. But if you yourself understand the topic, it's not that difficult to explain. And nobody has to be a lawyer to understand that it's a legal matter, hindering the game's expansion. Here, I'll show you how to do it. Dear valued fuckheads that purchased Friday the 13th the game, it is my painful duty to inform you that a bunch of old rich dudes are arguing over money in court. That argument has restricted our ability to add profitable content to the game. As a result of this unexpected situation, I've lost a bunch of damn money, so I'm about to dip out and leave you all to your own devices. You're all doomed. The camp is cursed. Sincerely, your pusher man, Wes Keltner. P.S. Buy my next game. See how easy that is? Don't twist up people's reaction with a lack of comprehension. In fact, I tell you what, let's plug this bullshit in that he's talking about. Let's say all 15 million people playing the game are lawyers. Okay, you think that those 15 million people were going to react differently? Okay, you think you're going to have a different or more positive reaction? No, you just have 15 million pissed off lawyers, and all that anger would have manifested as a class action lawsuit or something. You were always going to have a substantial portion of people that they're going to have misdirected anger. They were still going to lash out at you and or go home and beat their spouse or something. Uninstall Friday the 13th the game, beat your spouse, and, become part of the DVD population. Because that's who those people are. Then he starts saying some really stupid shit, trying to support his story.
It's the same reason why you can't go buy a t-shirt right now that has the hockey mask on it.
You couldn't buy a t-shirt with the hockey mask on it. That didn't happen. Friday the 13th merchandise did not come to a halt. Now, to be fair, maybe there was an order from the judge that anything that was officially licensed, the production on that merch was supposed to stop, right? And maybe there was some kind of limitation order to limit certain networks. But I damn sure didn't notice it. Nobody was going around yanking shirts off the clothing racks. You could still buy and sell stuff online. The game and the movies were still for sale. What do you think? They're going around the country recalling cases of t-shirts from Spencer's or something? And a lot of us know that a lot of that merchandise is not officially licensed. You know, it's some person in their garage printing t-shirts or whatever. You know, the game and the movies were still for sale. You know, there were not armed men running around the country stopping big rigs because they had, you know, a case of Friday the 13th coffee mugs on the back. Oh, well, you know, you got a case of Friday the 13th coffee mugs on the back. We're going to have to confiscate that. Now, the reason that I lock in on this is because Wes can't help but let his mask slip. Now, this is supposed to be a PR video for him, but he can't help himself from ruining his own PR campaign. See, this is how stupid and ignorant he thinks you are. And for many of you out there, he's right. But this is how little respect he has for the horror community. He comes out here and just says these ridiculous things. But see, this is his opinion of you. So this dude just sat out here and tried to tell you that you weren't a part of a reality that you were. He just tried to tell you for like what, the last 6 or 7 years, you haven't been able to buy Friday the 13th t-shirts or movies or posters or coffee mugs and socks, panties, well, I don't know, whatever. It's all out there. Funko Pop models, you know, toys, figurines, comic books. It all stopped, right? Because it all reappeared once they shut down everything. That's when it all reappeared. It all just reappeared once the lawsuit wrapped up. But you couldn't get it. You couldn't get it during that time frame. That's what he wants you to believe. Like you don't fucking know.
Everything is stopped. It's why the last movie was 2009 and there still hasn't been a movie. If you think about that,
Yeah.
like it's crazy.
That's why there hasn't been a movie since 2009, if you really think about it. Well, here's the thing. There are some people out here that do think about it. So let's just take what he just said and plug it into reality, okay? And yes, I know Crystal Lake is in production. I know they announced a new game, blah, blah, blah. None of that supports his claim. Because what he is asserting is that there hasn't been a movie since 2009 because of a lawsuit that started in 2016? What? Again, he's very defensive, and he's defensive because he's probably told a bunch of lies. There's some things he doesn't want to talk about because, again, he most likely had a bunch of options available to him to keep working on the game. So again, let's take what he just said and let's just plug it into reality, okay? First of all, just because no movie got made, that does not mean that they did not try, all right? Just because there's no movie in production doesn't mean they're not trying to get one in production. Like when you start talking about getting movies made, there is a whole other side to, you know, how these scripts get written and revised, and this guy quits, and this guy gets fired, and they hire a new director, and then he runs out of time, and he goes off to work on something else, and he didn't like that script. There is a whole other level to how movies get made, okay? And I think the thing is, see, Wes knows better. I think he knows better. But, you know, he's just desperate to try to muddy the waters and to try to support his story. So he gets to blame there not being a movie in 2010, 11, 12, 13, and so on a lawsuit from the fucking future. That's what he just told you. Well, this lawsuit that was going to happen in 2016 hindered the production of the movies in the 2010s. That is horseshit. Even if he's just trying to reference like a tumultuous relationship between the rights holders, whatever, that's always been there. There has always been bullshit surrounding this franchise and pretty much every other major franchise. But let's do this. Let's explain these gaps, right? So he's trying to say that the gap from 2009 up until today is because of the lawsuit from 2016. So he's trying to say that that gap is unique. Well, prior to 2009, it was Freddy versus Jason. 6-year gap there. So what are we blaming the 6-year gap on? Are we also going to plug that gap in to a lawsuit from the future? Is that what we're doing? Because we got Space Jason in what was that, 2002? So 2002, 2003, everything was just fantastic. and not related to the lawsuit from the future, but you get to blame a gap from 2009 to 2025 on a lawsuit from 2016 that happened like almost in the middle. What the fuck are you talking about, Wes? What the fuck are you talking about? Let's keep going. Okay, so what? Space Jason 2002. Well, what happened before that? Oh, well, Jason Goes to Hell, 1993, I believe. Shit, I'm still a kid. 1993. Good times. Oh, good times. But, I get Jason Goes to Hell, 1993. That's a pretty big gap. So, do we get to blame that gap on the lawsuit from 2016? No. Can we? No? So we don't get to blame the lawsuit from the future in that case. Because you're saying that gap is unique. You're saying that gap somehow bolsters your defense. See, all he's trying to do is he's just trying to put up another layer of defense because he's hiding something about what went down with Friday the 13th. Now, furthermore, Freddy versus Jason was supposed to happen in like the mid-90s, and it didn't happen until 2003, right? So I think that we've established that Wes Keltner's assertion is complete horseshit. He's trying to say that gap from 2009 till today is uniquely different from all these other gaps. So the reality is that the Friday the 13th franchise was white hot in the early and mid 80s. People were lined up out the door. The theaters were packed. And then they would get a second release, also white hot, once the movies went to video. Right? So for those of you that are too young, you used to be able to go rent your movies, like in physical form. All right, so if you're old enough to remember a Redbox, well, just think about there being an actual big box store. I guess you wouldn't call them big box. Then just think about like an actual storefront where you would go in and rent video games and porn and movies. Okay? So there was a lot of money flowing in, and money talks. So Sean S. Cunningham, he was going to push these movies out as fast as he could because he had been working his whole life for breakthrough. He started out in porn and trying to make clone movies like Here Comes the Tigers or whatever. So he had his meal ticket and he was going to cash it in as many times as he could. Now, however, eventually, the ticket sales started to drop off, especially after Nightmare on Elm Street. There's a lot more competition, a lot more slasher flicks, but it didn't really matter to the fans because Jason stayed immensely iconic, plus I remember when I was a kid in the 90s, we'd like drive by a movie theater and it would have a double feature, like come watch part 1 and part 2. People would be lined up, out the fucking door going around the building. Furthermore, like I say, once you hit like the 90s, okay, Jason, Freddy Krueger, The Shape, Leatherface, they just weren't as popular at the movie theater, right? You had, just horror had evolved. You have stuff like Silence of the Lambs or Candyman or the Hellraiser movies. Not the slashers weren't still popular, but just things had evolved, things change. Or just like if you watch, say, like an action movie with a lot of gunplay. So look at the action, look at the gunplay, look at the firefights from movies from like the 80s. Okay. And then you watch them today, where they send somebody like John Barenthal or Keanu Reeves to actually get real weapons training. That way it translates over into the movie. Things change. But this guy, and the worst part about this is he knows this. Wes knows this. He's just counting on you not knowing it. He's just counting on you being so fucking stupid that you don't actually think about what he just said. So before we move on to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre section, I just want to reiterate some things that we covered in the last video about Wes Keltner's background, okay? This guy has been around for a long time. He has a lot of experience. His focus is on the financial gain for him and his business partner, not the quality of the product. That is not where his focus is, and I think that is what the record shows. This guy had deals with American Apparel and Ford Motor Company whilst he was still in college. That's not luck. That's ambition. That's insight. That's talent. My point is, in certain areas, this is smart mother, and he's always calculating what he thinks you know, what he thinks you understand. What does he think your educational level is? How much shit does he need to throw at you before something sticks? He calculates how he thinks you're going to react. Remember, he studied sociology and dropped out of computer science. How do you think he uses his sociology studies in business? So you better be paying attention in all of your future dealings with him. The ridiculous things that he is willing to say in front of a camera are a reflection of what he thinks about his potential customers. This guy just got in front of a camera and told you that you couldn't buy Friday the 13th products for the duration of the lawsuit. Who would believe that? So why would he say such a thing? Why would he say that? You have a business relationship with this man. Whether you like it or not, whether you know it or not, you have a relationship with this man. Did you buy Friday the 13th? Oh, you got screwed on that deal, didn't you? Because it seems to me that none of the people that were collecting our money looked out for us in the end, did they? Did you buy Texas Chainsaw Massacre? That deal went south too, didn't it? Did anybody look out for the customers? Well, Gunn has attached themselves to the Halloween game. How you feeling about that? Okay, guys, next stop, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre section.